Good morning, my name's Harriet Flower and this is Cynthia Lally. And we're representatives of the Personal Histories Project, which is an oral history project here at the University of Cambridge, where we seek to further understand our own subjects that we're studying by looking at the personal memories of big names in our own subjects. This is Dr. Goodall, if she needs introduction. It's a great honour on behalf of Personal Histories to meet you, and thank you for doing this interview this morning. First of all, I wanted to ask you, what first sparked your interest in primatology, and also was it through your work with chimpanzees that you first became interested in conservation and developed such a passion for it?
Well, you know, my childhood dream was to go to Africa, live with animals and write books about them. And everybody laughed at me because back then girls certainly didn't do that sort of thing. My interest was sparked by Tarzan. I mean, seriously, I read the books about Tarzan. And eventually I saved up money and got out to Kenya and heard about the late Louis Leakey and went to see him at what was then the Corindon Museum. And he asked me lots and lots of questions about all the animals there. And I'd been spending all my free time in the Natural History Museum in London, so I could answer lots of his questions. And then he gave me a job as his secretary, because I did a secretarial course, because my mother said, well, then maybe you get a job in Africa. And that led to him suggesting I should go and study chimpanzees. I mean, I couldn't have in my wildest dreams thought of studying something as exotic as a chimpanzee.
Thank you. And I know that your mother accompanied you to Gombe, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little about how it was to be a woman in such a male-dominated field, and indeed in such a male-dominated institute that Cambridge University was at that time.
Well, of course, when I first went out to what was then Tanganyika, I had no degree. I had nothing. Just a passion for living in the forest with animals. And the British authorities, because it was part of the British colonial empire then, and they said a young girl on her own in the forest, absolutely, we will not take responsibility. So in the end they said, well, if she has a companion. So it was my mother who volunteered. So we only had money for 6 months, and that was hard to get. And that did not come from an academic institution. It came from an American businessman who said to Louis Leakey, okay, here's money for 6 months, we'll see how she does. And fortunately, during that 6 months, but towards the end of it, when I was really getting worried that I wouldn't see something exciting and the money would run out, my mother had gone back, I was on my own with a Tanzanian cook and boat driver, and I saw this seminal observation of chimpanzees using and making tools, and that was what brought the National Geographic in with funding. And then it was a year later that Louis Leakey, found me a place at Cambridge, and he said, you have to get a degree, I won't be here to get money for you forever, we have no time to mess with the BA, so I've got you a place to do a PhD in ethology in Cambridge. I didn't even know what ethology was, and no internet in those days, so anyway, that's how it all began. And it's never been any barrier to me being a woman at all, absolutely not. I was not trying to compete in this male-dominated world. I was out there doing my own thing with the chimpanzees, and when I came to Cambridge I was just working away on my PhD. I wasn't trying to get a university teaching position, I wasn't trying to get tenure, so I wasn't competing with males at all. There were no males in my field.
Yes. Well, I wondered, being an archaeologist, that we now make quite a lot of comparisons between primates and in an effort to understand our evolution. With the disappearing habitats of chimpanzees now, I wondered if in your period of time of studying them that you had noticed any adaptations in the chimps.
Not really. I mean, where I'm studying, Gombe National Park has remained a national park with forest. The trees from the surrounding hills have completely gone. It's a tiny national park. The change that we see is that the two communities which are closest to the human communities, two chimp communities, have not done well at all. But our main study community is more isolated from people, apart from the research staff.
Yeah.
So they're just carrying on with business as usual.
As usual.
Yes.
And my other question was, if money were no object, what would be needed to be done to preserve our chimp environments?
When I flew over Gombe and all the surrounding area, it was 1994. That was when I first realized the utter devastation outside the park. And looking down at these completely bare hills, clearly more people living there than the land could support. And the question immediately came to my mind, how can we even try to save these famous chimpanzees when the people are having such a struggle to live? Not rich enough to buy food, they had to make do with what they could grow, the land was losing its fertility, the soil was eroding, with the tree cover gone. And so that led to our program, when I say our, I mean the Jane Goodall Institute in Tanzania. It led to our Take Care program, TACARE, and that is improving the lives of the villagers living around the park in a very holistic way, starting in the areas that they felt would make the most difference, growing more food, education for their children, and better health facilities. So that's where we began. We didn't begin by marching into an African village, white, arrogant people, and saying, well, we're very sorry for you and this is what we're going to do to make things better, which is sadly how so much aid has been, unfortunately, distributed. So we had a team of Tanzanians, and the person who was project manager, who started this whole project, Take Care project, he now heads up the Africa programs headquartered in the US, and we have replicated this Take Care program in other African countries because it's so successful. And one of the things that we were able to introduce, which I think has made it so successful, is microcredit, based on Mohammed Yunus's group, Grameen Bank.
Yes. Mainly
Groups of women.
Yeah.
They cannot take out a loan unless the project that they've come up with is environmentally sustainable. And at the same time, we talk about family planning. And every village has between 2 and 4 local volunteers who've been trained in women's reproductive health issues. And every village said, why didn't you come before? Yes. So we're now in 32 villages, way out beyond Gombe. Yeah. And because they love what we're doing, they've all agreed to put the land that they must set aside for conservation, the government demands it, in such a way it's a buffer all around Gombe. So where those bare hills were, after 5 years, there were 30-foot trees. And we started a corridor moving towards the other chimpanzee population further south. Because if this doesn't work, the Gombe chimps, there aren't enough of them. There's no more than 100. And in the long term, we'll be inbreeding.
Right. That's the issue. Thank you very much.
I'd like to say on behalf of Personal Histories, thank you so much for talking to us this afternoon. Thank you very much. Look forward to hearing you speak later on.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.